Welcome to Kiki's Chat Show. Today is the 3rd of March. I'm looking forward to saying the Ides of March on the day that it will be the Ides of March, and then we can talk about it. But loads of things happen in March. One is International Women's Day, so that will be next Monday. So I have to do a show on that day just to balance it So I'm going to find beautiful women, including my two doctor ladies, and we're going to talk about normal things. So we've got that to look forward to. Now, today we're going to continue with what we were talking about last week, which was vaccine hesitancy and also why we are hesitant. So today is vaccine questions. Questions from our community, questions from people. A lot of people sent me questions. Some of the questions were the same thing in different ways, but I'll tell you all about it later. What I need to do now is introduce you to my guests. I know some of you that are familiar with them, but something happened last week, which I'm going to correct. I introduced Sedina Agama, Associate Director, Medicines Optimization, Chief Pharmacist, Southwest London Clinical Commissioning Group, Merton Borough. And then we have Dr. Dorcas Owusu Yanoma, and she's a general practitioner at Woodland Avenue practice in Luton. So the three of us are all over the place in London, but because of the internet, social media, here we are together without even having to take a bus or a train. It's beautiful. Now, I'll tell you one thing. A month ago, in The Guardian, it was on Saturday the 16th, a woman called Linda Geddes, I think she's the science reporter or something, she said that, they found out that women, younger people, and those with lower levels of education were less willing. They were hesitant, particularly high among people from Black groups. And then she put, where 72% said they were unlikely or very unlikely to be vaccinated. I hate these comments. When you say Black people and then you put 72%, it's as if it's a huge amount of people. But really, what is the percentage of Black people in this country? In this whole Great Britain, it is 14.7%. That's the population of Black people in this country. So when they start talking about these huge numbers, 72% said, and this and that said, of what? 72% of what? Anyway, rant over. I've done my rant. That is my rant. I have questions for my doctors, and we need to find out. But all of these questions are questions that people have asked me to ask you. Now, apart from the usual thing I said last week about choice and about how we need to make choices that are very important to us, a lot of people feel that they are being forced or pushed into making that choice, which is not of their own making. Now, shelve that. In Ghana, they have the vaccine. I've forgotten how many vials they took. Now, in each vial, 5 people can have the vaccine from that vial. Isn't that right? True?
Well, it depends on the size of the vial. I mean, here in the UK, 9 or 11 people can have a dose out of that vial. But I don't know what size vials they've got, but yeah.
Okay, so people to 11 people, 9 to 11 people can have this injection. And because of that, I keep calling it injection, but I should really get used to saying vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. So this is good because all the elite VVIPs, presidents, vice presidents, their wives, their family, and all these people are getting it. All the people the both of you know, are getting it and they're fine. But the population of people in town, in the towns and villages who are very, very, very suspicious, are not even looking in that direction at all. And I wonder why. But I do not have a Ghanaian doctor here to talk about it. So if we need to, we will find one, but I haven't been able to find a doctor today. Okay. Now, my first question is something which goes like this. There is a rumor that women are disproportionately affected and have longer and more severe side issues or side effects from both contracting the COVID and having the COVID vaccine. I know a few of my personal friends had the COVID. They really suffered, but they got over it. And yesterday, one of those friends then had the vaccine. She was fine in the first few hours. And then towards evening, she felt feverish, ill, and all of that. I said to her myself, and I'm not a doctor, I said to her, look, if you vaccinate a child, or they have a temperature, you hold them, you look after them, and then after a day they're fine. So she's going to be fine and all of that. Truthfully, I've been very busy. I haven't been able to get hold of her. So I don't know how she is at the moment, but she's watching. So I'm sure she'll be able to tell us something. Please, can you help me with this question? Sedina?
Thank you, Kiki. There's a rumor. And I think from what I can see, it is a rumor because I can't see any evidence that sways towards men or women. And that's particularly in relation to having COVID and the effects of COVID, but also what happens after people have had the vaccine. I think in terms of the vaccine, as you know, I work in 2 very large COVID vaccination clinics. One of them is in an area that has a high BAME population, and the other is in quite a high Caucasian population. We haven't noticed that women have more serious side effects. I think it would be fair to say perhaps more women are having the vaccine, so perhaps the women are less hesitant about having it. So there are quite a lot of women. When we immunized the over 80s group, there were more women, but that is because quite often the women outlive the men anyway. So you're more likely to see women in that older group. But in terms of the side effects, my suspicion is that women are talking about it more, because women talk a lot about what's happening, how they feel, and what's going on. We talk to our friends, we share it, and men are more reserved. Although I do ask people, when they tell me they've had the vaccine, I ask them, how have you felt? And I can't say that the side effects have been more severe in the women than the men. I think some people have nothing at all. Some women say, didn't feel a thing, maybe had a little bit of an achy arm. Some people don't even have a bit of an achy arm. So I can't find anything that supports that. So I'm going to say that it is a rumor, but I'll be happy to be told I'm wrong. If I find that, I will come back and tell you. But from what I can see now, I did check the MHRA website to see if there was anything like that recorded, and there wasn't. So all I can say to people is if they have their jab, I'm sure they're told, as we tell everybody in our clinic, that you will have, as you said, Kiki, some post-immunization, temperature, headache, achy arm. That's quite normal. But most people tell me after a day or 2, that's it. They take their paracetamol, they're absolutely fine. So if they have any more severe side effects, it's really important that they report it on the yellow card system. So when you go to the vaccination center, after you've been immunized, you're given some information to take back and read. And on there, it does tell you what to do, how to report the side effects. And I think, as I said to somebody today, we're all responsible in creating the side effect database on this vaccine. So we need to report it. If we have something more severe than we're expected to have, then we need to report it, because only then will we have a truer picture of what's going on with the vaccine.
Okay, that was one long explanation, but I hope people understood it. Basically, it is a rumor and it's not true. Okay, the second question is, we have not developed vaccines or other interventions for diseases which still exist and which have killed and continue to kill a lot of people than the virus. So when our own people are forcing us to have the vaccine, what does that mean? Dr. Dorcas.
Okay. I think it will be helpful to know what people are thinking about or talking about in terms of diseases. Because when we talk about vaccines, we are usually talking about diseases that are caused, by, maybe a virus or some kind of an infective condition that can generate some form of immunity from the body. And because of that, therefore, a vaccine can be developed using the way the body responds to these viruses. I remember last week you asked about malaria and the fact that why is it that malaria has been hanging around for so long and yet there hasn't been a vaccine developed for malaria. One thing I would say is that the issue of inequalities in terms of, the developed world having access to vaccines that protect people from diseases, for instance, childhood diseases like measles and mumps, things like tetanus that can actually affect people, can kill people. Basically, that inequality has been over the years, in fact, since 2000, has been being bridged by organizations like Gavi, the Global Alliance Organization. And I know that as far back as 2015, there were talks about finding vaccines for malaria. So that is not something that is completely out of the picture. And there are vaccines for other conditions that have been developed with time, like cervical cancer. And we know that there's the HPV virus to help deal with cervical cancer. So what I would say is that with some medication, with some conditions, for instance, we know with cancers, there's a lot of research going on to find solutions for various kinds of cancers. So it's not all diseases that can be dealt with vaccines. But we can say that for many of those communicable diseases that kill people, kill children, reduce life expectancy, quite a few vaccines have been developed. And I've mentioned, the measles, mumps, and the rubella. There's even rotavirus for children. So I don't know that question is entirely a fair question, because it would be helpful to know what kind of diseases the person is thinking about. I hope I have answered your question.
Can I also say that there is actually a malaria vaccine that the WHO has been working on and has actually been used and piloted in Ghana. So there is a malaria vaccine. It's not as widespread. And it looks like most of the work has been done in 2020 and 2019. I guess we've been so preoccupied with the COVID and the impact on the world that the news about the malaria vaccine hasn't been as widely communicated. I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but I did have a look after the question last week. So there is a malaria vaccine. The WHO are onto it. It's been used in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi. So it's there. as to what its implementation phases, all of that. That maybe when the day you get a doctor from Ghana on the show, they'll know a bit more about it. But that's great news.
Indeed.
Okay. Now, the other question is, why can't we sue the vaccine companies for any future negative effects? Now, people are very suspicious that some of their children who've got autism, for example, is because of the vaccines they received when they were babies. There are a lot of people who are very concerned that a lot of these vaccines, and there is data out there about the number of Black children, especially Black boys, who have had autism because of vaccinations. Now, are people's suspicions valid, or do you think that this virus is so dangerous that we should overlook all the concerns and just have it?
Well, I wouldn't say we need to overlook all the concerns, and that's not certainly the case. I think we have to remember that the way this vaccine was developed, because we're in a world pandemic and we needed something to get us out of the difficult situation that we're in. It meant that when the vaccine was found to be effective, it's not actually licensed in the true sense. So when it comes to sort of the medical legal aspect of medicines, you have a medicine that is licensed. That's what happens normally. The company develops a product, they put it through the trials, they then apply for a license, okay? Now, if you notice that the language that has been used in relation to this virus is that it's authorized. So the authorization is very different to the licensing. In that sense, the processes are the same, but from a legal point of view, these vaccines are authorized, okay? They're not licensed. Now, when there's a licensed product, okay, the company takes full legal responsibility for it. But the same doesn't apply when it's an authorized product, because the product has been brought to use because the governments and the organizations across the world have requested that this product is made available. As we know, in a shorter period of time than normal. They have supported all the financing, and the risk all sits with the governments and the organizations of the world. So in terms of the legal aspect, it's not licensed, it's authorized, and the legal responsibility comes with a licensed product. I think the other side to this is that if the company had to take the legal risk, perhaps we wouldn't have these vaccines in the time that we needed to have them, because the company would have felt that they're taking a huge risk. So the whole point was to support these companies to produce what we need. And you know, this week in the UK, we're seeing how effective these vaccines are. You know, the whole week there's been a lot of news about the reduction in deaths, over 50% reductions in the over 80s who had their vaccines first. So if the companies had to take that legal responsibility, we probably wouldn't be where we are today, certainly here in the UK, where the vaccination program has progressed. So that's the issue. I think feeling worried about that when you've already experienced, as you said, some people have experienced autism, which they believe is due to the vaccine. That's natural, but I think in this case it's a different situation, in that it's, as Doc has explained last week, it's a world pandemic. We needed to do something as soon as was possible, and it meant that that side of the product is not the same as perhaps the flu vaccine that it has been licensed. It's an unlicensed product, and as a clinician, when you use an unlicensed product, you use that product knowing that you are the one going to bear any issues when it comes to it. So for me, as a pharmacist, I'm registered. As a doctor or nurse, all of us using that product know that we're using a product that is unlicensed. Normally, we would consider, how we feel about using the unlicensed product. and knowing that we will be taking some responsibility for being involved in it. So if Dorcas is happy to prescribe it, and as a pharmacist, I'm happy to issue it, and a nurse is happy to administer it, if it's unlicensed, we all know what we are doing when we're doing that. When it's a licensed product, it's very different. We're not taking the same level of responsibility. So, you can say that all of us healthcare professionals, we are taking on an unlicensed product because we believe it's the right thing to do in this pandemic to get us out of the pandemic.
Okay, people want data, and someone is saying, they wish people were given data so that they know what the truth is. They know what they have all of the information in their hands. A lot of people don't have everything. You say now, you quote BBC. And so whilst you're quoting BBC, we don't believe the BBC. Dorcas, can you help us with that? Because we.
All right. Okay. Can I just add something to the original question and then come back to the thing? So, with this autism situation, or this concern about the MMR vaccine causing autism, I should say. So this was, it came about because of the studies by one Dr. Wakefield, I believe, a number of years ago, who proposed that there was a connection between the vaccination and autism. If you will recall, because of this whole scare, quite a number of parents refused having their children receive the vaccine. Because of that, measles that was essentially eradicated from this country began to show up again. And measles is a killer disease. Anyway, eventually, this Dr. Wakefield was found to have, his research was totally flawed. And because of this, he was struck off the register as a doctor in this country, unable to practice in this country anymore. So I want to correct that perception that a link was found between autism and MMR. That is unfounded. So there again, that was something that was believed but was found not to be true because the research did not underpin that. Okay, so coming back to your second question. So you said we want data about the effectiveness of the vaccine. Am I right?
Yes. And why? I mean, I can add a little bit more meat to it. For example, the vaccine is the only thing that is being, given. Why is there no other option? Why is it just the vaccine? And why are we being told, oh, it's the vaccine? You have to have everybody must have the vaccine. Why?
Okay. So if we look at what has been going on since last year when the pandemic broke out, we can see that there have been measures to try and keep the infection under control. So measures, namely what we all know, the face, the hands, and the distancing. But if we are all honest, we would agree that those measures, maybe to some extent, at some point, have helped to maybe curb the incidence of the disease up to a point. And then we've had, the rises, and we've had to have the lockdowns, and this has happened at least 2-3 times over the year. And so it has become quite evident if you look at what has been happening in the countries all around, that there's been actually a struggle to try and manage the disease. It's not been easy to do that. I mean, one of the things that came out at some point was that vitamin D was probably something that maybe people of color in this country needed because we have darker skin, we don't have as much sunlight. And it was thought that maybe if we took vitamin D, that might reduce the incidence of COVID in BAME people. So that was being encouraged I don't know how many people took that on board. I mean, I know that I started to take vitamin D just to protect me from the data that was going about and the research that had been done. But the reason why we are putting forward the vaccine is that it is quite apparent that there is not much that we can do that has enabled us to control the disease. And we do know historically that vaccines are effective in reducing the incidence of disease. So let's take childhood mortality in Ghana, say. We know that because of the incidence of measles in Ghana, say killing children, incidences of diseases like diarrhea, killing children under 5, causing childhood mortality to be quite raised in countries like Ghana or in deprived countries. We know that because of that, there has been efforts to increase the distribution or, the availability of vaccines in parts of the world which are poorer. And we know that that has definitely helped reduce childhood mortality in countries that have received the vaccines, which before did not have access to it. So historically, there is evidence, medical evidence, research evidence to show that vaccines do work when they are used for the purpose for which they were actually produced. So I hope that helps answer that question to some extent.
Well, to some extent. Vaccines do work. That's what you're saying. And so, at the moment, it's only the vaccine that's there, and the vaccine is the quickest way to eradicate the illness. However, people may wish for a different type or a safer kind of, because I saw a woman was being interviewed on the television the other day, and she said that why isn't there a tablet? She doesn't understand why she should take a vaccine, and that she'd rather take a tablet. And I thought that was really interesting indeed. People, some people think, there's too much fuss going on. Why don't people just take the vaccine and get on with it? I mean, what is your view on that? What do you think that people should not be asking these questions? They should know that the scientists know what they're doing, and therefore they should just take the vaccine and shut up.
I don't think, I said on your last program, that for me as a healthcare professional, every patient or person that has concerns, it's my duty to work with them to allay it, and the duty of all healthcare professionals. So as I always say, no question is unfounded or unnecessary or silly, etc. I think back to the thing about why a vaccine. I was reading something the other day. So I guess we've almost taken for granted the fact that we actually have 14 vaccines that are out there that we present our children for day in. Actually, when I look at how many vaccines our poor babies have today, my children are much older. But when I look at my goddaughters and how many vaccines, I think there's some days when they end up with 6 different vaccines when they go in to the clinic to have their vaccination. And all of those vaccines means that some of us have never, ever seen the diseases that they prevent. So when I was in my final year, one of my projects was on smallpox. If you ask me what smallpox looks like now, I couldn't tell you, because it's been eradicated thanks to vaccination. So I think we've almost, we're in a world where we've taken vaccines for granted a bit, but they're there and they happen and they do their thing. And so, we've all been busy living our lives and haven't really thought too much about it. But suddenly this virus comes along, we're all locked up at home, we're all fed up, we're watching the telly all the time, we're on the internet all the time, we're on WhatsApp all the time, and suddenly we've all become vaccine experts and we're all talking about it. So I think it's just a sign of the times, really, because other vaccines have come out and you know what, we've just gone on with it. Rotavirus vaccine came out, HIP came out, meningitis B came out, And for those of us who are healthcare professionals, yes, it's something new. We just got on with it. I cannot recall anybody ever asking me about meningitis B. Should I give it to my child? Rotavirus, should I give it? And mostly, if you listen to Her Majesty the Queen, when she was talking about her experience with the vaccine, one of the things she said was, people may not have had a vaccine before, and so are a bit nervous about it. And when I listened to that, and I thought, you know what, she's absolutely right. There will be some people who've never had a vaccine in their adult lives. They may have had the vaccine as babies, but they've never had a vaccine in their adult lives. And I'm talking about people across the world. Not, in the Western world, people travel, and so they have their travel immunizations. But for people who've never traveled, they may never have had a vaccine in their adult lives. So we totally forget that we subject our babies to all these vaccines because we believe in them and we know they're going to keep our babies safe. But suddenly, the world is thrown into the situation where, as adults, we need to think about the vaccine. So I think quite rightly, we're asking questions. Normal.
Yeah.
I think it's not suddenly. I think people are asking questions because a lot of back talk and, people have said a lot of things about the impending vaccine. And some of the things that they're hearing are not from people that you could trust. Comments have been made, and this is not speculation or rumor, but truth. And especially regarding Africans. Now, Africans know, there was a time. I think we should get this straight. There was a time when it was interesting to be an Anglophile or a Europhile or whatever file that you want to do, which means that you preferred everything that came from the Western world. You would only eat sardine from the Western world. You would eat only your, corned beef, etc. And if you had imported goods, you were good. If you spoke good English, you were good. If you believed everything the white man said, you were good. That time is fast losing ground. We are now beginning to suspect from experience that the white man doesn't like you. The white man actually wants what you have to make better of it. And a good example is these vaccines or inoculations that we're talking about was actually introduced to the Western world by a slave in America who told him what we used to do when people were not well. And they picked it up, they've perfected it, and they've been using it. Now, the truth is, we all know what is going on. There is, systemic racism. There's racism everywhere. We know where we stand with the white person. We know what our situation is. Therefore, now that we know, if the man, and someone gave an example of, if your rapist who has just finished raping you asks you how you are, or then says they're going to give you something, are you going to trust them? It is bigger. The issue now and the question people are asking, and the reason why people are so distrusting is not because of anything than the fact that they don't trust the white man. Now, it's all very well and good that there is smallpox being eradicated, there is rubella and measles and all of that being eradicated. This is a whole new ball game. Remember that the bat came from China, alleged. The majority of people don't believe it, even though they think we should believe it. People are very suspicious of this whole, it is not the vaccine per se. So it is the whole pandemic the beginning and the end of the pandemic and the suffering that people think they will go through with the vaccine because of a pandemic that suddenly appeared. Now, to be truthful, there was the Spanish flu. It had the same kind of situation in this whole world, and it affected people in Africa because it was the white man's disease even then. And it is true, it's the Spanish flu. So, where we in Africa have never, so far, it is not documented anywhere that people suddenly got a pandemic in Africa and dropped dead. We know that illnesses have come from the Western world, which has affected us in a totally dangerous and difficult way, and it has killed a lot of people. So sometimes when doctors or scientists are talking and they flippantly tell us that, oh, fine, if you don't want it, it's fine. You are just, hello, even the illness, you gave it to us. It hasn't ever crossed any of the both of you and all, scientists and everything. Does it cross your mind that there has to be a concerted effort to try and tell people something, just so that they will understand that this creation, this amazing illness that has come to wipe out people, it's not their fault. And they should stop mentioning black people all the time. Do not make it a black thing. And when black people are trying to impress upon a black person to have the vaccine, don't make it look like black people are stupid. Black people are not stupid. Black people know that white people have something to do with it. That is the truth. And so I'm not giving you a lecture. You're my friends. I will never give you a lecture. But we are talking about human feelings and human brain. The brain is working. And there's suspicion. And maybe you guys have to go and tell your bosses that what is going on. It's not a matter of 79% of black people don't want to take it. It's women and young people. And what kind of nonsense is that? Something must happen now to change the narrative about how black people, of course, people are taking it in Ghana and Ivory Coast and wherever. Their whole understanding of the relationship of a black person to a white person is different. We are in the diaspora. We know that these people have never liked us. Never. Never. That is the problem. That is the problem that we are facing now.
Okay. Can I say something?
Yes, please say.
So to be honest, the way you put it, it seems as if maybe we belittle the way that our community feels. And to be very honest with you, you are right in the sense that none of us understands the origin of this illness. When it started and it seemed like it was a problem in China, some of us never thought that we would see what we are seeing to anywhere. I mean, to a fraction of the extent to which we have seen it. That's true. We agree that we have questions about all this that we don't have answers to. And we recognize the fact that because of that and because of history, there is underlying suspicion, there's underlying mistrust. That is agreed. Now, we, Sedina, myself, and I know of other people, we feel passionate about the fact that actually there are discrepancies in terms of people's health for us in this part of the world. We recognize that, and we feel that actually this is something that we are trying to do to bridge some of that discrepancy, or to bridge some of that gap. Okay, because much as you are saying, yeah, we don't want. Why do they keep saying black people? Why do they keep saying black people? Let's not forget that this disease has not been a respecter of race or color. So yes.
Well, that's the point. That you've made a point. That is the point. It is not a respecter of black, white, Chinese, Mexican, Brazilian. No. Everybody gonna die. If it gets you, it will attack you. So why is every news, every doctor, everybody talking about white people, black people? What is happening is it is making this disease look like these black people are not going to take the vaccine and they're going to reinfect us. These black people are going to be the holders of the disease. Now, hello? Black people didn't even know about this disease until they gave it to us. So that's where we're at. That's where the discussion is now. The discussion is exactly what you said. We need to talk, because where did they go to interview black people and get 79%? Where? Now, it's not you, I'm telling. This is a program. So we're discussing it. But I think these are the thoughts that we are going through with. These are the questions, and this is why we are asking these questions. Some people think that people are making too much of a fuss. But look, in life, this life that we live, there is the small picture and there is the bigger picture. And then there is the middle of the road, the ones who sit on the fence and are very stupid. We are now dealing not with the small picture, not with the big picture, but the truth. We really need to address a few things. Now, there was a program on BBC One yesterday which tried to discuss why black people were getting this virus. And it talked about how they were in the front line. Now, this man who is doing this program or fronting it went and introduced and discussed and interviewed nurses and health, the people, the cleaners, and all of these things. Why didn't he go to the doctors? Why didn't he make it a balanced thing so that the doctors died? A lot of doctors died. My friend, midwife, she died. Now, she was a senior midwife. She lives in a house with just her husband and a teenage son. And they talk about us as if we live in some hovels, as if we live 100 to a house, as if, these are the issues. These are the reasons why black people are suspicious, because they are lying. And they are creating the general frenzy, so that very soon they will tell us that we didn't take the vaccine and therefore we are reinfected. Now, very soon they'll tell us it's the black strain, the black variant, if we are not careful. Now, the doctors and the nurses and all of you people who are trying to tell us to go and do the vaccine, we are vaccinating. We are going. But you have to let them know that they should stop giving it a black face. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Candy. I hear everything that you say. I just want to comment a little bit about information. So in my job, one of the things that I do on a daily basis is have a look at how we're doing. I'm working in one of the areas that I work in has a high ethnic population. We see a difference in the two clinics. So as I explained to you, I work in two very different clinics. There's a huge difference between the clinics. The populations are different. The uptake of the vaccine is different. And in terms of looking at the numbers, when you say, where do they get the information from? Well, the GPs, and I'm sure Dorcas does the same in her practice, they do have a look at who's not having the vaccine. And definitely I can vouch for the DPs I work with. They ring everybody that has declined the vaccine. So the information isn't made up. They are ringing people and they're talking to people about why they're not having the vaccine. Likewise, care homes was a big issue in the beginning, and there's been a lot of focus on care homes. But one of the challenges we now face is the care home staff are not willing to have the vaccine. And again, when we look at the ethnic mix of the care home staff that are saying they don't want the vaccine, they are people from the minority background. So it's not a myth around the data. Your question about why is there so much about it in the media? Well, there's so much about everything in the media, but I guess from the program last night, it was very clear. Not that it wasn't clear to me. I work as a healthcare professional. I could see, and we talked about health inequalities briefly last time. We have the risks. That means that we were disproportionately affected. So I guess, when you were saying, what percentage of people are Black and ethnic minority, and it's a small, tiny percentage. But if you're looking at the population health, you have to look at everybody. You can't say, well, that's a small population, so we're not going to worry about what's going on there.
That is my point.
So
if you are looking at everybody, how do you hone in on just a little group?
Because that's where the risks are high, and that is where the preventative measure doesn't appear to be taken up. So it's only when you're looking at the health of your population, you do have to identify where those differences are, and you need to seek to do something about it. So the reason why I'm not in bed right now, as you know, I'm normally asleep at this time, is because I believe that I do have to work, and I sit in a room with people from different backgrounds, and we're talking about this issue of vaccine hesitancy and what have you, and it is clear from the GPs who are ringing their patients that we have a problem in certain sectors of the community, including my own, and I watch the Asians engaging with their populations and supporting them to have the vaccine, and I feel, well, I need to do the same for my community. That's why I'm here. That's why Dorcas is here. And all the things that you said, I don't refute them. I don't belittle them. They are issues. And I'm seeking to educate people who don't understand. And I have had to explain this very thing to some of the colleagues that I work with, to say, it's not just the case of people don't want it. There's a reason behind why they don't want it. And
I agree. Sadina, I totally agree. And we all know that these people have never really cared much about us. So, in fact, why they care about us now is a mystery. And whilst we are being mystified about it, we are mentioned every day in the news. And that is also a concern. This is a concern. Oh, I had questions. I put it in WhatsApp. I put it in groups that I'm in, and everyone is concerned about their concern.
Okay.
Why us? All of a sudden, we didn't bring it. We are victims mostly. All our people who have died in the first instance were PPE people who did not get the correct uniforms and protection. Most of them needed protection. They didn't. They died. That is sad in itself. So if you want to talk about why Black people are, that's what we need to talk about. We need to address and speak the truth continually. And so apart from that, and I sent you the questions just so that you know that people are concerned about that. That is a big thing. They asked me last week, they're asking me today, they are listening to the show now. They need to know. And that's why we're talking about it. There's so many questions. Okay, so I'll move on. So that it doesn't get emotional and drive us round the bend.
Before you move on, I just want to say one thing, that amongst those who are quite maybe I won't use the word resistance, but hesitant with regards to the vaccine, some of our friends from the eastern countries fall in the same category to some extent. So some of the Polish people,
Turkey.
yes, they refuse the vaccine completely. Now, why they are not mentioned in the news, that I don't know. We need to recognize the fact that newscasters, reporters will always say what they think will give them, the audience, or sensationalize things. So maybe that's why that is not out there. But we know that actually it's not just Black people. There are other groups of people who are also not very willing to have the vaccine because of their concerns as well.
And their concerns
Thank
are
you.
their concerns have different roots as well.
Yeah.
So I do on average at least one of these every single day. And I've had the pleasure of working with the Polish population, and the roots of their hesitancy are totally different to ours. So every group have different reasons why they feel hesitant, and our job is to try and understand those and see what we can do about it to give people the information and support them to make the right decision. Ultimately, like you said at the top of the program, the idea is not to convince people to do one thing or the other. It's to inform them to make the right decision and give them the right information to make the decision. That's the important bit.
I must commend Dr. Dorcas for speaking the truth on this issue and bringing in the fact that the Polish people are also refusing the vaccine. That in itself is heartening for me because it means that it's not just us. So now the concerns that we had were valid because for whatever reason, whether our reasons are different, whether we think, ours is one thing and theirs is another, the bottom line is there is hesitancy in other groups as well. And if that is so, is it skin color that is making the people mention the Black, the Indians, and the Pakistanis? It's the Black, the Pakistanis. We're at the bottom of the heap anyway. So of course they'll be mentioning us. And that's not good enough. And that's the whole discussion. And whenever you start doing that, unfortunately, we also think, and that is where the problems are. We are thinking. As they are acting, as they are behaving, we are thinking, and the thinking brings suspicion. Look, in truth, COVID is real. COVID is very real. And COVID is killing people. So people should make up your mind if the prevention is the vaccine. That's all that's there now. And therefore, people have to think carefully. And apart from everything else, no, especially if you're in the Western world and you're not taking your vitamin D like Dr. Dorcas said, then be careful. Because if you do not want the vaccine and you're not medicating, getting your immune system strong enough to be able to withstand the illness when you get it, know that your only other option is to have the vaccine. So I'm not here to tell people not to have the vaccine. I am here and to bridge the gap, maybe, to talk the truth and try and find out and to try and make the doctors, our two doctors and all their colleagues know that you are not dealing with sheep. You are dealing with human beings. And these human beings have valid, and especially here in this country, we know how to not say what we are actually thinking. And then we kind of say all things around it. Today we've said what we're actually. This is the truth. The truth is and it is enshrouded in mistrust and everything else. I want to thank you both, my ladies, Dr. Dorcas and my beloved Sedina, for coming here, hearing me scream my head off at you. I don't know what to do that, but this is quite serious, and therefore I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming twice to come and talk about this vaccine issue. Next week, I shall have a lady who is coming on to tell us that she has herbs and that Africans should embrace the herbs. So that's another thing that we have to deal and contend with next week. Thank you very much for coming on Kiki's Chat Show. Bye-bye. Be well.
Bye-bye.